Andrea, thanks for being here, participating with me in this webinar today. How are
Good
things in
morning.
Texas?
In Houston, it's nice, hot, and humid.
Well, I guess that's time of year, isn't it, for there?
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Geoffrey Smith. I'm the director of the Substitute Teaching Division at steady.org. And with me today is Andrea Tamberello from Katy ISD, just outside of Houston. And I'll be talking a little bit, and then we'll turn some time over to Andrea, and then I'll finish up a little bit. We should complete within the hour. I have probably way too many slides, and you can always say, please move on, Jeff, if we get a little worried. Andrea's presentation you'll just love, but sometimes I get a little wordy. So we'll go ahead, and again, I just wanted to make sure that you've got this information here. If you can't hear, here's just check your speakers and your audio output. Since we are communicating, you are hearing us. Some of you are hearing us, so we know that we're broadcasting. You can download the handouts. I did put up there the slides as well as the handouts. They're the same thing. The slides, I just made them as full as the page. And so if you need some detail that's on the slide, you can download that um, as well. So there's both a high resolution and then a smaller notes, but you can get them at steady.org/handouts. And under our webinar, you can download those there if you want to take notes with that. You should have got that in your email. Also, we want to hear from you, your questions to the right in the control panel. Please type in any questions that you have. Jessica's monitoring those for us, and so we'll make sure that we get those answered with us today. So thanks. All right, today we're going to talk about what and how districts are doing orientation. A little bit from our surveys and research that we've done. We'll share a little bit about that. We also want to talk about substitute teachers, what substitute teachers are experiencing, and things that we might want to address in the orientation, as well as substitute teachers' needs. Some of the surveys some of the things that they see that they need, and we might be able to help during the orientation. And then Andrea is going to talk about their district's experience in orientation and screening. So fascinating experience, almost really different than what we're talking about, but a great experience and something we wanted to make sure that everyone heard. That's why we wanted to do this webinar. And then at the very end, we'll have some questions and answers with that. All right, so some of the information today that we're presenting, especially that I'll be presenting, come from some of the surveys that we've done. We did a sub-orientation survey in June of 2013. Some of you participated in that. So we'll be presenting some of that information. Managing substitute teacher survey in June as well. I have some information in that. Most of that will be presented on Thursdays when we talk about best practices in substitute teacher management. Teacher absenteeism survey back in February, so we have some information in that. Again, more of that will be presented on Thursday. And then substitute teacher using technology. That was an interesting survey, and we'll be sharing a little bit of information out of that. So first off, one of the questions in one of our surveys, we ask how often is an orientation conducted within your school district? And so never. You can see along the bottom are the percentages. So we have, oh, I see that we also have a poll up. So Jessica's posted a poll. So while I'm talking, go ahead and answer. How often do you have an orientation in your district? So this is an interaction. So go ahead and answer that. And as soon as we have those responses, we'll close this poll. But tell us how often you have an orientation in your school district. Okay, so this is a new feature in GoToMeeting, so we wanted to use that, and which is good. We get good feedback from this. So has everyone had a chance to submit? Looks like we have the majority voted. Why don't we go ahead and close that? And so we can move on. Jessica, if you'll close that. Here are the results from the survey itself. Then we'll bring up the results from our little survey. As we asked school districts, and those who participated said there was about 16% who said they never conducted a orientation once a year, twice a year, 2 to 5 times a year, 6 to 8. The majority of the school districts participating in this survey said 9 times per year or more. And this is for first-time substitute teachers. So when they come on, become a substitute teacher. So a number of districts are holding those quite often, monthly or even weekly in some cases with that. Can we pull up our results, Jess? So here we have of those participating in this webinar, there's 26% that say never, 1 to 2 times per year. Again, 32%, the majority have quite often. So that's good. So as we go through here, if you have comments and you want to make, it'll be good for us to hear your experiences as well. All right. So how long are the orientations? Those who participated in the survey, again, there were a number that didn't do anything, but the majority is 5 hours or 5 hours or more, which is quite long. And I think with some of these, they include their training as well in counting the hours, because in a future slide, I'll talk about what they talk about. But so some orientations just an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, all the way up to 5 hours. Okay, how many usually attend? Less than 10. So these are percentages, as you can see. So less than 10, 11 to 15, 20, 15 to 24, so forth, 36 plus. The other category here at the bottom, these are districts that said they have 50, 100, 150, or even 200 participating. And so these were mostly really large districts where they were doing an orientation. It must have been in an auditorium type, so it was quite large. But this is how many usually attend. It's hard to put on an orientation for 10 or 15 because it's a lot of work, and then especially for 5 hours for that many. But that is done. No one who participated in the surveys was doing orientation online. All right, this next slide is a mess, I understand, but there is some good information here. So along the bottom are the topics. We ask him, how long did you spend on each one of these topics? So the calling system, the payroll, how to be paid, district policies, school schedules. Here's other, and this tended to be bloodborne pathogens and other things that they needed to cover. Classroom management. So these next sections are on actual training. So classroom management, teaching strategies, time management, special education, and fill-in activities. So this color here denotes 15 minutes. So 20% of the participants said they were spending 15 minutes on the calling system, 15 minutes on payroll, 16% said they spent 15 minutes on district policy. So that's how you read that. So the majority of them spent it on these types of things, 15 minutes or more, and then it bounced down and it came back up to fill-in activities back to 15%, which is interesting. This line right here says that they offer 0 time. And so we could eliminate that line, for example, because those weren't spending any time on these types of things. Then you can see what else that they're spending time on. See, 120, very little bit is spending on 120 minutes, if you will, on these topics. And so this gives you an idea of those who participated in the survey, what percentage they spent on these topics. But these are pretty much the topics that they covered. Again, as I mentioned earlier, other tends to be other things like bloodborne pathogens and other safety issues that they want to cover in an orientation. The research from sub-managers in our surveys said that if you had a magic wand, what could you do? If time wasn't an issue, if money wasn't an issue, how would you manage your orientations? And the majority of them, well, sorry, not the majority, but 29% did say that they would like to spend a lot more time on classroom management. Others said we want to work have more time with the substitutes. We want to do more training, spend more time in the schools, have them go into the schools, uh, work with them on how to interact with teachers and so forth. And so this is their response, is what they would like to do more of if they had the opportunity to do so. Uh, I did ask because of an orientation, what else do you do throughout the year? We wanted to know how you communicated after the orientation. Some districts don't communicate at all with their substitute teachers. Here, the largest was through email, printed newsletter, and posting it on the web, the login where the substitute teachers log in to get assignments and so forth. So those are the main common ways that districts communicated with their substitutes throughout the school year. How often? The majority was continually, kind of as an ad need basis. They would just do it as things would come up and move on with that. Um, Now, from substitute teachers, this all falls into what do you want to cover in an orientation. And so we asked substitute teachers some of the issues that were facing them. One question we asked them was, what technology have you been asked to use to implement while implementing a lesson plan? And we had 3,200 substitutes respond to this. And it was interesting that over nearly 60% were asked to work with a whiteboard, 75% with computers, not much with tablets, but projectors. So these are pretty high technology uh, demanding interactions. And then there were some that said our district just doesn't want us to use the technology. And, there's pros and cons to both, but it's fascinating that many individuals are using technology. Your guest teachers, those teachers who are coming in and working on a part-time basis, how much technology they have to use. This is a major concern that you might want to consider what you can do in an orientation to help that, at least address it, where did it go. It was interesting when we asked who gave you the training, what training were you given? And the permanent teachers shared some information with them. The students looked like the students helped them the most. They got the most help from the students. The district provided some information or no training was given at all. And anyway, so it's something you might want to consider addressing is the technology issues with your substitute teachers. We asked substitutes, what general advice would you give on regarding technology? They said really get to work with your teachers to get to know more, and then your students on learning more. Those were the bigger areas where they thought it would be helpful as to if they could interact more with the teachers and to learn more of what they want them to do with the technology in the classroom. Also, we asked them about their safety, and we asked the substitutes if they felt threatened, if they had been threatened. And out of the 2,000 substitutes responded to this survey, 86% said that they had not been threatened. Nearly 12% said that they had been threatened verbally. This first one is verbally, this one is physically. Now, this is over their career. And so the average of these individuals who participated in this was about 5 years or so. So a lot of them had been in their classroom for quite some time. So it's just not in this last year what percentage you have been threatened. So it's over their career. And so it was probably larger than what would happen on an annual basis. But 12% had been felt like they had been verbally threatened. Now, we all know that a verbal threat may be offensive to one, but not offensive to another individual. But there were 6% of those people who surveyed out of these 2,000 said that they had actually been physically threatened while in the schools. We asked, did you report the incident to my supervisor? Now, the 1,700 said that 76% said yes. Now, there weren't 7,600 people who were assaulted, but that's who answered anyway. So the majority do report their incidences to the supervisor if they are. But this is something I think in an orientation you might want to address with them. Now, this is an interesting fact here with the students. Treat me with respect. Between always and generally, those two added together is 96%. So the majority of the substitute teachers out of the 2,000 that responded to this survey said 96% said that they are generally or always treated with respect by the students. That's significant. I think all substitute teachers need to know that. It's not common that you're going to get feel threatened or not treated with respect. That's an interesting fact, and your district may vary, and but I would tend to think this is a pretty true representation of what's happening out in the schools today. So that's a significant finding there, I think, with 96% saying they feel the students are treating them with respect. I feel safe while substitute teaching. Again, you add those two together. What is that? 98%, 90, almost nearly, yeah, 98% feel safe. Those are significant things. I think that is their concern when they're coming in brand new. Do they feel safe? But of those who are currently subbing, 98% feel safe. All right. At this point, let's turn some time over to Andrea. And why don't you present what you're doing with your orientations, with your Blitz that you're doing, which is fascinating. I'm going to give you mouse control, I think, and that way you can click when you want to.
Okay, let's see.
It's not working. All right, I'm going to switch here to your presentation,
Okay.
and then I'm going to click this. There you go. Now you should have clickable so you can advance. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, it's not. Oh, there we are.
There might be a little delay.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. We do a couple different things, and we do here inside Katy. We do orientations, trainings, and blitzing. So they all kind of, depending on where you are and what your titles are. So I'm going to kind of give some clarification so that whatever terminology I'm using makes sense to everyone. We do before, and what I'm going to explain to you is what we call a sub blitz in the orientation we do before. That's bringing on new substitutes that before they've actually been hired. We also do a returning sub orientation every summer, and that's where everybody who is in our substitute pool that has maintained an active status, we do a reorientation with them. That is something that takes about 2 to 3 hours, depending on the group, and where we go back over expectations, points of interest that either substitutes along the year have shared. I keep notes of things that are repetitive concerns that subs have shared with me, or that campuses have shared that they're seeing a pattern of with subs. And so those are addressed during the summer so that we're starting off the year on the same footing. And I want to point out some of the things that you had shared, Jeff. A lot of the information that you had shared are issues that we bring up in the orientation. And especially this year, the technology has been the biggest concern that our substitutes are sharing, is that the increased expectations of using technology in the classroom is becoming a difficulty for them as substitutes. And so it's something that this year is one of my goals and focus, is how are we going to provide training for our substitutes on things like with the whiteboard. And
Unmuted.
The biggest obstacle is getting them the access into our system so that they are able to log on to our central technology. But it is definitely, Jeff, like you said, it's the biggest concern they have.
When you get that solved, would you let us know so we can tell everybody else? Because I'm sure everybody else has the same issue. So when you get that solved and how to give substitutes access to technology and train them, that'd be good.
Yeah, that's going to be the miracle. So I will, definitely. And it was interesting, like you said, that they have student training or the teachers training. Long-term substitutes get the training on campus. They provide them additional information. It's that day-to-day. But it was sometimes when they were able to log in using something with the teachers login, it is the students who were in there helping. The other thing, the orientation that we do during the summer, you brought up about threat of a student. One of the things that I always have with new subs that's brought up before we even hire them in my sub-blitz prior to something that we address in those initial trainings the substitutes bring up, has to do with the safety and security of themselves. And I always have new substitutes always ask the question, well, what do you do in a lockdown? Or I don't have keys. What if I don't know all of the procedures or the drills? And so what I did is the last training group I had about 325 in my reorientation that I was doing. And I asked of that group of substitutes, everyone who has been in an emergency to please stand up. And told everyone else, please look at them. And it was a small percentage, but yet a lot more than what you would think. And these were things where it could be a lockdown because there was an unexplained incident going on in a neighborhood, or there's a fire in the kitchen, or one time someone thought they were hearing gunshots, and it happened to be there was a lot of backfire off of a car lot, the repair shop, but ended up in a lockdown. And so what I did is I asked that group, I said, please tell me when you were in the true emergency. As we all know, kids are goofy when they are doing fire drills, stranger drills, that they kind of are silly and they talk and they misbehave. I said, did you see the same behaviors in an emergency that you have seen during drills? I said, please, raise your hand so that we can address it. And no one did. And I said, okay, so are y'all telling us that in the event of a true emergency, children rise to the occasion of all of the training and drilling that they have done? Everybody in the last 4 trainings I have done have shaken their head to them, yes, absolutely, and shared how the kids help them be in charge, help them have the information. And so it's different than you said about safety in the slide, but yet it does have something to do with our substitutes feeling safe and secure, that even in the event of an emergency, it is a team effort, and our students, when they have an emergency, are able to take care of it. Because this is one thing we can't train them enough on, nor can we provide any type of orientation that really truly will meet their needs. So I thought that was kind of
Right.
an interesting thing that happened this summer.
Interesting.
So, all right, okay, let's see. Let me see if it's got that delay going. Okay, all right. My first slide, and I know it's going to be in the handout, happens to be a poem. What I do with our sub-blitz, this is where we are trying to bring on new substitutes. And so in a couple other slides, I'll share exactly how we do it. But when I have a group that I'm going to bring on, I read to them this poem that was written by a staff member here in Katy ISD that explains to them what substituting is. Because before I even interview these people, it's important to me that they understand the importance that we place on substitutes, so that they understand my process that I'm fixing, to explain matters. That our substitute teachers keep our buildings afloat, that they allow us to continue providing an education. So I wanted the copy of this poem to be able to be shared, because it's something that is kind of unique, that truly gives credit to our substitutes and what all it is that they do, to explain that from the teacher point of view, they're valued, they're needed, they're appreciated. All right. Now, this is, I start off with trying to recruit. And in trying to get our substitutes, these are some of the different things that we have done. Some of them we still do, but some of them we haven't needed to in a while. But when I first came on, our substitute fill rate was running around in the 80%. And we did not have, we just flat out did not have enough substitutes to meet our needs. The economy was doing really good. People were working elsewhere. And then I think that a lot of people really didn't understand what substituting was and the opportunity that it could provide. So set out very aggressively to start recruiting. And one of the ones, so we started off like at the beginning of each school year, all the campuses have their an open house. Well, this is a captured audience who believes in education, whose kids are going to school. Many stay at home or part-time, but these are people who would understand the importance of us having people and substitutes in the classroom. So what we did is either we maintain a booth, like a table that is set up, or we send one table display out there and use just the science fair tri-board that says substitute for your campus, and has the some pictures that of our different campuses with substitutes working with the kids, and explain the sublets and had our salary, what the pay rate was going to be for our substitutes. And then in addition, it had a flyer as to how to apply. Huge success with that, and the success was based on campuses. So we ended up increasing a subpool that only wanted to be specific to that campus. There were already parent volunteers, and when they weren't going to volunteer, they were filling in as doing subbing. And it also increased that of those volunteers, since they had the flexibility, if they were at the campus volunteering for the morning, they needed a half-day sub, they were able just to put them in. So it was really unique and definitely benefited the campus a lot. And I don't know what just happened.
Sorry.
Oh, cool. All right, there we go. All right, the other thing that we did use our local newspaper, district communication, through our communication department. We had the campuses putting information out on the marquee, on their marquees, as well as on the district marquee, substitutes needed, with a phone number and web address, trying to get the information out there. And then when we hold our own job fair, and our job fair can be rather large, we may see anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000 people, but also set up an information for if you want to be a substitute, because a lot of these people trying to get jobs aren't necessarily going to, and they may want to sub as a way of getting themselves in. So that increased our certified substitutes. And kind of the same thing going within our own human resource or the personnel department. When we went to job fairs, we have information on how to also substitute, not just get a job. It's on our district website. We keep flyers up in our front office. And then with the alternative certification programs, we send to them the flyer and information on my Blitz. I'm fixing to have one, and they send it out to their applicants. So really trying to reach out to the different areas who would have qualified substitutes who are interested in education, wanting to come in. And then the last, our campuses, again, their marquees, their newsletters, word of mouth. So doing some of these rather aggressive approaches definitely pulled in a large group of people who wanted to substitute. And so once we were able to increase recruiting, we then needed to have a process. And so our process is called a Blitz. And so first we recruit, and then we start prepping for a Blitz. And this is mass interviewing of a large number. So I get interviewers who are going to be able to interview for our substitutes. Every substitute gets a face-to-face, one-on-one, sometimes dual interview. And these are our principals in the district, our assistant principals, district administration and department heads that we have here in our district office, nursing department for nurse heads. And we have utilized some of the paraprofessionals in specialized positions to interview also for other people who want to do paraprofessional type of work, because we needed to know some things as far as maybe with some of the clerical, and that kind of looking at their skill set. To get those that we recruited on our app, those being the applicants, we invite them, let them know that they need to register for our Blitz, sending them out, online an invitation and a registration, what they need to do, so that we're keeping them active and letting them know. Because most of them, when they're filling out applications, they click on they want to substitute. They don't know that we also need to interview. They think they just get to go straight in. So we send them out, even though we have the information on the human resource website, we have additional, when I'm ready for the Blitz, letting them know, understand the process. And in it, I also attach the job description for our substitutes so that they, again, have an idea of what our expectations are going to be. Now, to do the sublets that I'm going to show, here are some of the materials that I have to prepare ahead of time. We have interview cards, and the interview cards are based on the different type of substitutes we have. And if there's anyone that's listening that even wants copies of my interview cards, tests, anything, I will go ahead and I'll get that to you, Jeff, so that you can attach that in case someone wants it. So I'll have that to you today. But the interview cards, I have one that's based strictly for certified. Then I have one that's based for our paraprofessionals, and then one that's based for our non-certified but teacher substitutes. And the reason we separate them is because we also boast to our substitutes, and we advertise to them what a recruiting tool this is. So my principals use these interview cards when they're trying to hire. They come in and they call me and ask, do you have anyone that you interviewed certified for English or for EC through 6 that really wants 4th grade? Because the interview cards have on there what's your certified area, what is your preference as a substitute, are you interested in long-term positions, are you interested in full-time work being hired, so that I'm really able to meet the needs of my substitutes as well as support the campuses with their hiring. The other thing is that we provide, I have to prepare for them, a English language arts tax test. That's Texas State for graduation. All the juniors and seniors have to pass an exit level reading and writing assessment. I give a portion of that test as part of my Blitz to each one of the substitutes, and I explain to them that if we require students to read and write at this level in order to graduate from our school, our substitutes have to read and write at this level so that we know that you can meet our students' needs. This had to be put in place because when I took on substitute office originally, there were a lot of substitute complaints from the campuses that our subs were not able to read, were not able to write, that there seemed to have been some barriers in communication that they were having. And so we did have to put something in place so that they were meeting the needs of the job. The others, I do provide those interview questions to our interviewers and videos, and I'll show later what the purpose is of videos. So just some things to make it organized and go well. As far as our space, and again, this is here in Katy, the capacity, but I'm dealing with 7 high schools that are looking at over 3,000 kids. So we have a large school district, so we have space that's larger, and I'm needing to maintain a substitute pool of about 1,800 to 2,000. So that's why you're going to see that my numbers are really large. Depending on the district would depend on, you would scale it appropriately for your needs. But the testing room that I use has a capacity of about 200 applicants. And then my interview room has a capacity to hold 60. I run about 20 interview stations. And then I need to be able, of course, have computer access and access to be able to upload my videos. All right, this is, and yes, there is a guy on the front row who has his head down. He had just been writing, and he had put his head down to take a brain break. He actually was not snoring or asleep, but it's my favorite picture because it looks like a typical classroom with your front row guy and his head down. So what this is one of my rooms with doing the screening process. These are applicants coming in, and I think this group was small. Only I think there was about 120 who ended up in doing our interviews this day, or were applicants this day. They're invited in, and as you can see, their heads are down because they have been given upon entry. They were given a test that they need to take, and so that's what they're working on now. And just prior to them starting the exam, I spend about 20, maybe 30 minutes going over with them the job description, our expectations of substitutes, what the job entails. I go over criminal history and the required background expectations that they need to have. I explain to them how many days we expect them to work. And then I tell them that, from here they will be interviewed, and then if that goes well, we will then invite them back for a full-day training. And the full-day training is about 8 hours. And so that if at any point anything that I've shared is not what they thought subbing would be, that they are more than welcome to go ahead and leave now so that they can recapture the rest of their day. And there's always some who do, but the majority do end up staying. And it's important to me prior to that they do have an understanding, and so I kind of call that, that's like a little orientation that they have prior to even getting into it with their interviews. Okay, now from here, from the screening process, this is what this is kind of sets up their day. I address that group, and like I said, it's going to take some time. I put on here 40 minutes, but it's usually about 30, where I go over them, the expectations again, with the working with kids, have them fill out their interview card, explain their process, the criteria. Then they take that skills test, and then because they're getting them to the interviews, everybody doesn't get interviewed at one time. Everybody's not finished at one time. I also show training videos over subbing, because again, this is a captured opportunity for me to get as much understanding of what the expectations of subs are going to be, and as much additional kind of work and training as possible. And the training videos that I show are strictly on classroom management and how as a substitute to work with them on classroom management, because that is the biggest need that they have in preparation, as well as some of them fixing to have interview questions. There's no reason they can't answer. They at least had some even training in the videos as an understanding. So it allows me to have a nice expectation in an interview. If they couldn't process from the video into an interview question, I know that they're not going to be successful in the classroom. All right. This is what the interview, one of the different styles of interview stations look like. In an adjacent room, I just have tables set up where interviewers on one side, substitute applicant on the other. You can see here at the bottom, these are my happy people. You look at her cute waving. They're eager and ready, and these are the actual interview stations. The applicants always ask me if it's, that it looks like a speed dating session. I'm not sure what that looks like, but apparently they kind of laugh. It's nice and boisterous and loud, and what I have is that the administrators in an ideal setting is 2, and they take turns asking questions of the substitute applicant. Why do you want to teach? Or why would you like to be a paraprofessional? What do you think will be expected of you, during the day? And they give a scenario of an emergency, and ask them what they would do. They give a scenario with if a parent comes up. So there's a lot of different things that we're trying to ask. How would you handle if you walked into a classroom and there were no lesson plans? Most of our interview questions are pretty tough, and the purpose is we want to make sure that they get it, what the job is going to be, what we're going to be expecting of them, and make sure that we have people that do have an understanding that substituting is not a place where you bring a magazine, read for the day, and tell the kids, put your head down. So that's really a big purpose. And the reason why we like doing paired interviews, it is an opportunity that normally it'll be maybe someone who's more elementary focused and someone who's high school, because when they're asking, I don't want a high school person to say this wouldn't make a good substitute. For their perspective into a high school or an elementary, thinking this person isn't necessarily nurturing enough to be a quality substitute, but at a high school they have the knowledge base. By combining the people with 2 different perceptions or 2 different backgrounds, we're able to make a recommendation to either hire this substitute, we recommend them for all levels, or we recommend them just for secondary or just for elementary. And we do have that with them. I also try to have a station that I have a bilingual administrator. with many of them boasting that they have that bilingual capabilities. Since we do have our bilingual classrooms, they are interviewed in Spanish and in English when that opportunity arises, so that we can make sure if we're going to put them in as a recommended to the bilingual substitute pool that they truly are. Because we've had people say they're bilingual before, we've put them in, and their Spanish speaking skills was incredibly limited, and so that put the campus at a deficit, having to completely revamp their day when they thought they had someone who actually was going to be able to teach in that Spanish capacity. All right. Here's kind of what the process looks in general with our subs. They complete that test. We escort them over to the interview room. I do number cards sometimes I don't. And the purpose of the number cards is just to make sure someone doesn't get out of line. They seem to like that better, knowing they're going to have their opportunity, that they're next. The paired interviews, they're complete, done with this day. And then on the back end, we grade the tests. We review the information from the interview and the test. We look at their criminal history report. That's what CH is. And then we invite them to attend a training, or we give them we call it a C letter, stands for see you later, at maybe another Blitz. But the C letter tells them thank you, and you're more than welcome to reapply or to contact me and ask for advice. And the invites that we have, starting last year, I started different trainings, one for our certified teachers, and then one for non-certified. And this year we're adding a different type of training. It'll either be a certified training, a general substitute training, and then a training specialized to our paraprofessionals.
Andrea, tell me,
yes.
Do you have a percentage of those people who maybe start the process that you send C letters to? What percentage receive a C letter, would you say?
It's actually gone down. When we started this originally, because we're going on, I started this, I guess, wow, Jeff, I guess it's been about 6-7 years?
It has.
7 years?
Yeah, since I've known you.
Yeah, it's been about 7. So when I started it 7 years ago, it was huge. I would probably say we dropped easy maybe 30%. And that was the first, and then that's when I beefed up on the recruiting, trying to get more applicants that were going to meet our needs inside the classroom. And then it decreased. And I would say now, if we will have invited to attend, let's say 200, out of that 200, 150 will actually show to the sub Blitz. And then from that 150, we usually invite about 130 of them to 120 to attend a training. Of that 130, 120, the training usually is about 100. We kind of then drop off. So the process from how many start it is about 50% finish it. But it's different stages along the way that they drop off.
Sure. Good. Thanks.
So that's why you definitely want to be able to invite many, because they're not all going to show up. So it kind of, it logistically goes with the about 50% rule. All right. Let's see. Okay. And then this is to be our new substitute. Again, we have the Blitz and the screening where we go over everything. Then we have the training. And as you can see, we follow SubSolutions and your training model that you have with training our substitutes. In my perfect world, I would train them for 2 days, but it seems that doesn't necessarily work out. So they do get an 8-hour training, and the majority of our training is spent on classroom techniques and information, not the payroll like you were sharing in your slides. Payroll's pretty fast. I tell them I have 2 slides on payroll, and I point them into the handbook and say, here you go. Here's the information. how to use our ASOP system. It's about 30 minutes. And we send them a link also with the training for additional questions that they can go to for that link. And then I go through the campus information that they want them to have. And I kind of call it it's the do and do not list. And then I start off their training with a list of scenarios that the kids have, or excuse me, the substitutes have to go through. And then from those scenarios, each one of those scenarios is attached to, it could be a legal and ethical, it can be classroom management, it can be technology, and then we start the training, and I use the scenarios as a springboard for the substitutes to have something to think about, and then how what I'm training them in applies directly into the classroom. And we get their stuff in, and then they're ready to go. So it's a lengthy process, but it's a process that definitely benefits our students.
Very
Any
fascinating.
questions?
Yes, any questions that you might have, please type them in the comment or the question section, and we'll watch for those. But that was fascinating, and that's a lot of individuals to pass through at a given time, and to orchestrate that, to have your administrators there, your interviewers, and to have the printed information available. And that is a lot of work. But it is fascinating that you've got, when you get done, your new Katy ISD substitute teachers are ready to go. They've had a lot of good experience with knowing. One comment was, I definitely like the a copy of the interview cards. When you send those to me, Andrea, I'll put them on the website just below the handouts, and so you can
Okay.
download it there as well. Anyone who would like to see those interview cards, that'd be good.
Okay. And
All
I
right.
do want to say one thing else to the group is that some may think that they would have problem getting the campus people to volunteer. They loved it, and there's huge support from our campuses about this process. And how I started when I originally had to go into and present this to our principals, was very weary as to what they would say. But I remind them that I started off with, I heard y'all that you want more qualified substitutes. I heard you want a higher fill rate. I heard you say that you wanted to know specific subs for your campus. This process will do all of that for you. So I turned it into a buy-in and a we, and that this was what they had asked for. So it was very difficult for them not to send me somebody to volunteer to do these interviews. And every time I send out the request, I get lots of people. And the other thing is to advertise to the administrators while you're interviewing, write down the names of people you want. They're untouched subs that nobody else has put on a preferred list that you can immediately call yours. And I would say out of every sub-Blitz, at least one of them gets hired full-time in some capacity.
What is your fill rate?
The fill rate now, I was doing some other things in human resource, just took back over in November the substitute office again. And putting this, I kind of vamped it up again like I had done before. In 3 months, was able to go back from an 80% up to 95, 98.
Wow.
Using a sub-Blitz to get those qualified substitutes in will get you people who want to work and will increase your sub rate 5 to 10% easy.
Wow. Good. Very good. What other benefits have you seen from doing this process? I like the idea that you've brought in, your not faculty but administrators in, and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. What other benefits have you seen district wide? Maybe.
I would say community-wise, the benefit is because the people who come in, the majority of them are community members, and so it's positive. It's positive community relations in that they're saying they want qualified people working with my child. They want qualified people on campus. So community-wise, it's been incredibly beneficial for those in there to say, okay, I get this. They're trying to get the very best people working with our children in the absence of the classroom teacher.
Hmm.
That is huge. The other is that when a campus, originally campuses just, they would complain about their substitutes. Well, they now know they helped hire them. So I have found that on the campus level, them being directly, actively involved in hiring substitutes, they now take ownership of them. And so when a substitute is on campus and they have a concern, it's not they just call me to deal with it. They go down there and they talk to them.
Wow, good.
They advise them.
Yeah, that is good. That is a
Yeah.
big deal.
So there's nothing you can do but gain positive results.
Do you pay your substitutes to attend the training?
No, they do not get
So they're not
they do not
employed.
get paid.
They're not
No,
employees yet.
they're not
Before okay.
employees until afterwards. And so that's like they have to go through the training, which is when we collect their paperwork, do their paperwork, we verify everything while they're in training, and then they become an employee.
Yeah, interesting. Very good. You know, we found that 42% of the districts, only 42% of the district interview substitute teachers, you being one of them. Do you find that interviewing them prior to then the orientation slash training has been beneficial?
Absolutely. You wouldn't put a teacher in front of the class that you had not interviewed and had training. So why would you put a substitute?
Yeah,
And that's kind of our take on it.
yeah, that's a big commitment, and I commend you guys for doing that. You do well with that.
Well, and you who you monitor and check and hold accountable is what you value. So this by having this process, our substitutes feel valued.
Good. Good. Well, very good. Thank you. I've got a few more slides, and then if you have any more questions still for either me or for Andrea, then we'll take them and we'll answer them. So, thanks for this putting this information and sharing it with us
My pleasure.
on Blitz. Um, I'd like to talk a minute about another school system and how they arranged the orientation that they conducted. This school district had 57,000 substitute teachers, 75 schools, so it's a larger system. The enrollment has increased 99% in the past 10 years, and so it's a big district and getting bigger. They wanted to address some issues that they found through technology, meaning that they were taking data and they looked at the data and it was saying some problems, and they highlighted some issues that they wanted to solve. One issue was the total number of days in the process for an applicant to be from a substitute teacher when they applied to when they got put in the classroom was 6 to 8 weeks. And they felt that that was a long time. They were losing people. That wasn't a good process. So they identified that. Those that attended the trainings, for example, only 40 to 45% completed the training afterwards. And so they were spending a lot of time in orientation, but yet, you said you had 50%. Now, that wasn't 50% of those people who came to the trainings. It was 50% of the applicants. And then you said from what 200 were invited, 150 showed up to be interviewed slash the orientation, and then 130 to training,
Correct.
and then actually 100 showed up or completed the training. And here it was 40%, 40 to 45%. So they were spending a lot of time with individuals even before, and their applications were increasing. So this was an issue that they had to deal with. And what they did is they first did an orientation. Then after the orientation, they did the training and a background check. And then after that, they did the paperwork, and then they completed the file. This was the 6 to 8 week process that they were having individuals. So they looked at what they could do differently. Now, what they did, and between these two slides, they put the training first. They said they implemented the online training. They said, number one, if anybody wants to become a substitute teacher, take the training. Now, this put it out there so individuals could look at and know exactly what was expected of them on their own prior to even coming in and doing anything with the district. And when they did this, they moved that first. let me go back to the last slide. You see it was number 2. Look at this longest process, step 2. They moved that to be step, oops, wrong way, sorry. They moved it to be step 1, and it was a shorter process. The background check became very short. The orientation and paperwork was very short because now they were dealing with just individuals that had completed the training, passed the assessment, and was moving on and ready to go to work. So, for example, it dropped it to 1 week for the orientation and the pre-qualification because they'd already completed the training, and anybody who had a license didn't have to take the training. They came back for completion of the paperwork, took a week, and then completion after the application, after the orientation, was 3 days. So now it dropped from 8 weeks to 2.5 weeks, if you will. And so that saved them $57,000 a year just by the order in which they put their orientation, and that took them a lot of time and money to process a lot of individuals who never came into that ended up in the classroom. And by just rearranging a few things, doing exactly what they did, uh, saved them a lot of money. And it also increased, as your experience increased, the fill rate went from 97 to 99% during this period of time when they in implementing this. That was one experience in just the order that a school district had, in just the order that they placed in orientation and training. So another one thing we'd like to recommend is we have a website, stadia.org/subm/resources/flyers. And if you, let me click on it, see if it goes. This page on our website are flyers you can download during your orientation. You can give out to your substitute teachers. So it's just a way for them to register for free newsletters. We have tips and suggestions, for example. It's kind of a fun thing to give to them. Um, uh, to hand out something. We do have the new 8th edition handbook out. Some districts like to give a flyer. If you uh, if you want the flyer, it's a $2 off flyer, so we don't just post it to download, but go ahead and fill it out and email me, and we'll send you this flyer for $2 off if you for your substitutes if they want to order it. We also have, and you can download this flyer as well, the Subwise, which is the ongoing e-mentoring course. It's a weekly email of gentle guidance for substitute teachers to encourage them throughout the school year. They get a 2-month trial on that if you want to hand that out. If you want some door prizes, let us know as well, and we can do that. So that's that website that I had here. You can find that, and that's on your handout, so you can go there. Now, another thing we'd like to recommend, I'm speaking fast, I'm sorry, but there's some things I want to cover. With the new 8th edition, we also have an 8th edition trainer manual. And if you want to email me, I'd be glad to send you a copy of the trainer's manual. This is an idea that we use in our trainings, but it actually came from an orientation. When I visited a district, they were using this with their district policies. They created a handbook treasure hunt, so a district policy treasure hunt, and questions. They asked questions. So they had the individuals go through their policy manual and actually come up with answers. And so on their own, they were doing this. It was timed. They were having fun. Some competed with another, but for example, fill in the blank. Number 3, it says behavior is largely a product of its. And if you look to page 2, it says immediate environment. So they're filling out, they're looking at it, and it gets them into a policy manual or whatever the safety manual or whatever you might want them to do. It doesn't have to be just a substitute teacher handbook. It could be anything that you have. Come up with some questions and have them do a scavenger hunt or a treasure hunt through there and find it. It opens up the material, it gets them familiar with what's in there, and it's kind of fun. Anyway, that's a suggestion. So we have a number of strategies that we use in our training that you might want to use in an orientation. For example, this is a fun activity that's in there, is the creation of an ideal substitute teacher. And we have them do a graphic representation of an ideal substitute teacher. So they look in chapter 3, they have a few pages that are assigned to them, and say, in these 3 pages, look at this and then graphically draw or represent what the ideal substitute teacher would be. So they, as a cooperative learning group, these substitute teachers will get together and they'll draw an individual, and they'll put a bag, for example. They might be carrying a bag, a sub pack with the things inside the sub pack to be ready. They might show an individual with not in high heels because they're going to be teaching kindergarten, and that's would be hard to get down with the kids if they're in high heels, this kind of thing. And so they're talking to each other about things that they would do in becoming an ideal substitute teacher, and then they present it. So this is a fun activity without lecturing, without PowerPointing, to cover these things that they're actually doing themselves. So even in orientation, you might want to consider how could you model what you expect them to do in the classroom. In large groups, I understand, Andrea, what you're doing, it's a total different situation. But in trainings, if it's small enough in an orientation, use some of the teaching strategies that you would want them to implement in the classroom, in the training, in the orientations that you're conducting. That way they can see things that examples. So if you want just a copy of the trainer manual, I would be glad to. It just came off. In fact, we got the final copy this morning. We will be printing it, but we'll also be distributing it through PDF for the trainer manual and on things that you can do with that. So please let me know with that. Some recommendations on to conduct in putting together an orientation. I would suggest that you have a subcommittee made up of substitute teachers, of permanent teachers, administrators, principals, those kind of individuals and that committee. You can talk about pay once a year if you want to, that's fine, but it's not a gripe session. It's okay. We know that permanent teachers will be out of the classroom. How can we make this the best situation for the students? And so it'll be a good time to talk about, well, it would be helpful if we had this and this and this for the substitutes, or teachers might say it would be helpful if they gave us this kind of feedback. And so then you're kind of making policies for your whole district. So a subcommittee is very effective, and you have the stakeholders here that are responsible and have influence and know what the issues are. And so you can work as a committee and resolve that and then make it district wide. And then policy as well as come up with what you want to cover in the orientations. Flow of applicants into the classroom. Consider, your flow from start to end and see how you can help with that. And then you're welcome to participate in any of our surveys. And if you participate and invite your substitutes, we can break it out by district. And so you can compare your district with the other population if you want to see certain things. So please do feel free to participate when we announce the any surveys that we have coming up. Okay, I've talked really fast, but thanks for attending. And any comments, Andrea, that you'd like to make, or any questions that anyone have?
I will say I have a comment that's kind of off the cuff. I do when I train the ideal sub, and I can't remember if it's a part of a study or if it's something I added to it, because you've known me long enough to know I kind of start ad-libbing.
Right.
But I took that activity and then I follow it up with, now draw me the ideal student.
Oh.
And then the connection is, how does one become ideal? And get them to the point it has to be learned and it has to be taught. And explain to them that as substitutes, many of you, this is new, you need to be trained. You're going to make mistakes. How do our students become everything you just listed? And then the kicker, and it's almost like a punch in the gut to them, I ask them if adults should be held to the same standard, a lower standard, or a higher standard than children. And so I remind them that what you see in an ideal student then is what you should really be as an ideal substitute.
Wow, very good.
And it really, it's an aha for them.
Oh. Yeah, very good. Good. Well, that was a good comment. Appreciate that. Well, thank you all for participating. And again, thank you, Andrea, for your time and effort and all that you're doing and what you did with us here today. And we will talk to you all later. Thank you again. Bye now.
All right. Bye-bye.